Okay, I think we're good to go, and we'll get everyone kick off the meeting here. I want to say thank you to everybody for joining. Welcome to our webinar series, Road to Security. This is not a sales call. This is a awareness pitch that we're trying to do to raise awareness about going beyond cybersecurity. There's a lot that we can do as people inside of our businesses to support our employees, make decisions to assist in making sure that our business is secure more than just the typical cybersecurity. I'm going to start by painting a little bit of a picture, and what I'd like to do is kind of try and change some of your perspective on how you look at cybersecurity and your business. Typically, what I want to paint a picture of is a car driving down a road. Car is your business. You've got your employees inside of your car. And in the past, what we've had is we've had people rely on things like email filtering, uh, firewalls, antiviruses, those kinds of things to protect your business. And what the concern that we faced as a business around those is those typically are more like airbags and guardrails. And you don't want to be using those to keep your car on the road. So what today is about is to set us up for the next 4 of these episodes that we're going to be doing. We're going to talk about why this is important, who we are, where this is coming from, go through some case studies, and set this up to try and improve all of our learning. So as I mentioned, there's 4 parts. Over the next 4 Tuesdays of the month, we'll run through this. For those of you who don't know, we're JEI Tech. We're a managed technology service provider here in Alberta. We've been in business for more than 15 years. I'm Scott Coleman. I've been in the IT industry for more than 10 years, and I started with JEI Tech in 2016 as a technician. I've worked my way up to the operations manager. While cybersecurity is one of our main focuses, we're trying to dig a little bit deeper than that. We want to put controls and policies and procedures and protections in place inside of your business before we get to the cybersecurity part. So we'll talk about some real world scenarios, and then we'll get some tips and tricks, and then the 4 Ps: policies, processes, people, and lastly, products, of how to protect yourself. So why does business security matter more than cybersecurity? While we're not a legal firm, we are aware that in Alberta and Canada, businesses are required to comply with privacy laws at a federal level and at a provincial level. There are the PIPA Act and so on. Both require you to notify clients, employees, RCMP, and the Privacy Commissioner. Even without looking at some of the legal parameters, most insurance companies also require you to disclose any form of a breach. So your assets across your businesses are all going to be different, whether that's customer data, employee data, products, patents, your own money, someone else's money, finances. And then we start moving into some of the stuff that's less tangible and harder to put a monetary value on, but there's your trust with your clients, brand trust, availability. We're in a service industry, so something that's critical to our customers is our availability to receive calls, provide support, and then ensuring the long-term viability. There is roughly around 38% of any business impacting event. 38% are only 38% is financial loss. 62% is made of paying our employees, cost of repairing the damages, lawyers, time with dealing with it, involving insurance, and more critically, 60% of small businesses faced with major business impact close within the next 6 months. And those business impacts are anything that stop your business from operating as the way it should. When we're talking about cyber, you just got to remember, you're just a number on the internet superhighway. They're not targeting your business or you as a person. It's just like the thief that walks down the street trying car doors. They don't smash windows. They're not even going into your house, but they try the car door handle, rifle through any cars who left the door unlocked. And so it's important to make sure that we lock our car doors. And we're talking about doing the same thing with businesses. So we've got a couple different examples that I'd like to go through. The first and biggest one being a customer of ours who was not a customer. They were using company@gmail.com email address to run their business. And they had 4 or 5 people in the business that were logging in to use that email, and they lost access to that email. Now, it's a free email. There's very little, if any, support available for it. And the person who hacked into the account managed to do so and then promptly changed all of their recovery options to their own. So basically, there was no way to recover that account. Now we're talking about a business with 5, 6 employees. So they didn't have multi-factor turned on because that was causing issues and impacting their business. And what ended up happening is they spent the next 3 months attempting to regain access. When that failed, going through the process of making sure all of their customers stopped sending e-transfers, payments, and information to those emails. And lastly, they spent another month and a half dealing with just vendors, trying to get their vendors to update the email. And the problem that they ran into is some of the people that they deal with required a verification to be sent to the old email to say that the email was being changed. So things like email are becoming critical to our businesses, and making sure that those are secured emails that you own and possibly in some cases pay for, so that you aren't using a free service like Gmail, Hotmail, Yahoo to run your business. If you lose access to that, each business looks different, but that may be something that's critical to your business. Another thing that we had run into recently was a client of ours did not have our email filtering service, and they received an email from company.com with an invoice. 20 minutes later, they received an email from company.s.com with payment details for where that invoice was to be paid to. And we dug into it forensically with a couple of the tools that we have, and it would not appear that our customer was compromised in any way, but rather the person sending the invoice was compromised, because the attacker had intimate knowledge of and information about the invoice number, payment details, and their normal processes for processing payment. What ended up happening is an excess of $40,000 was sent to the wrong bank account. And a week later, the company contacted them, asking them where they were at with payment, and only to find out that that money was now lost. Now, the RCMP has been involved, insurance has been involved, and like I said, we've dug into it forensically and tried to resolve the situation as best as we can, and we've put things in place to prevent that. But basically, what this series is trying to talk about is not relying on guardrails like email filtering and cybersecurity training to prevent those from happening, but rather having policies in place inside of your business so that your employees, if we receive an invoice in excess of X amount, there needs to be some kind of verification of that prior to sending payment, whether that's we received an email, so now we're going to phone, or something along those lines. So those are 2 case studies that we have that are very fresh in our mind from recent events in the last 6 months. And that leads us into, okay, so what could these people do? What does it mean to go beyond cybersecurity? So while I'm 98% confident that our email filtering and our email paid for email solution would have fixed both of those situations, all of our investigations would lead us to believe that the imposter had some kind of intimate knowledge of the processes and payment details and access to accounts that they shouldn't have. So the best prevention would have been rather having training with our employees to spot these, or a policy and a procedure. So a policy to make sure that if these criteria are met, and a procedure of what to do if that criteria is met, of verifying all of the payments via two methods. If you receive a phone call requiring an invoice, follow it up with an email to a trusted person at that vendor before paying it. If you receive an email, follow it up with a phone call to a trusted person. Verifying all of that information before we go to it. Very much like multi-factor authentication, but leading more into our day-to-day lives. This also leads into the people investment, making sure that we are training our employees, praising our employees, guiding them, training them to trust but verify. That is a critical part. Then we have the process and policies that we've already talked about. These are like the signs on the road. You know, we don't throw our teenagers into cars and expect them to drive. There's a training, there's road signs that tell them the speed limit, tell them where to go, how to go, warning signs when you're coming up to a curve, those kinds of things. We need to put policies and procedures in place and processes as guardrails, as warning signs, as lines on the road, so that people know where to go and how to go. And each business is going to be different. You know, for our business, it might be an invoice of over $500. For another business that we deal with, you know, they have payments that go in over $3,000 every day. So their limits might be different. But we don't know those as an external IT provider. So having those internal ones is critical. We have a short 5-step process outlining if you receive an email requesting payment, look up the vendor in our trusted vendor catalog, whether that's a contact list that you have, or a website that you can look it up on, or stored in Word documents, and then phone those. Verify the invoice information is correct. You know the numbers match up, the services match up. Something else that we'd like to talk about is phone calls. It's very easy to fake an outbound phone number. It's very hard to fake an inbound phone number. For example, I can dial out as any one of the phone numbers in the High River area. Now, we are a phone provider, but there are attackers that have that ability. But if you were to hang up with me and call back on whatever phone number I called you on, it would go to the original person. So if you do receive a phone call, hanging up and calling back that you're a little bit fishy about, hanging up and calling back is a very easy way to verify someone's identity. And then lastly, we will talk about products for protection. We are not going to sell you a product. We're going to talk about types of products rather than brands. We have AI email filtering, we've got firewalls, we've got training platforms and antiviruses, but these are not more about selling them, but thinking about where those tools fit into the policy, into your business, and thinking of them more, like I say, as airbags and as a last resort, rather than the first line of defense, but rather as a last line of defense. We want those products, your employees, to be trained to recognize things before we have to use those products. So today we kind of talked about some of the critical aspects of business security, why it matters, and how we need to try and think about protecting essential assets. In our next episode, we're going to talk about the investing in our people, how we do that, why we do that, fostering a cybersecurity culture within your organization, building a trust between your employees, and investing in our internal processes and procedures, and installing a mindset, and empowering our team to defend our business at every line, whether that's a receptionist through to a business owner. Like I said, it's on Tuesday at 11 a.m. next week. And I hope that you guys can join. If you can't, all of the people who have joined or signed up will get a recording of it. And now we've got some time for question and answers if anybody has any. Today, we're going to start our actual journey. We're going to start talking about going beyond cybersecurity. Everyone's all heard about cybersecurity, so I'm trying to go a little bit past that Going back to our car analogy from last week, of your business being the car, your people being in the car, this week we're going to be talking about people in your car, how we invest in them, how we make sure that they've got the tools they need, and the culture and the business around them to support them in identifying threats and investing in our people. Security is not just about implementing the latest technological solutions. It's about creating a culture that prioritizes and values security at every level of the organization. It begins by instilling a mindset that understands the significance of security in protecting not just the company's assets, but also its reputation and trustworthiness. We don't know your employees as your IT company. You do. Engaged employees understand the importance of their role and the danger that their role possesses if someone was to compromise them or their role. They're not only dedicated to their roles, but they actively invested in well-being and security of the entire organization. When employees feel connected to the company's mission and understand that their role in maintaining that security, they can become proactive and a vigilant force that goes far beyond any technology that we can put in place. They're more likely to adhere to security policies, report suspicious activity, and actively participate in training programs. A security-aware workforce is one that understands the potential risks and threats that the organization faces. This awareness goes beyond recognizing the most common cybersecurity terms. It actually involves comprehending specific risks associated with your industry or the type of data that your company is handling, and the potential consequences of something happening, like a security breach. With this knowledge, employees can identify and address potential risks before they escalate and contribute to a more resilient and secure business environment. Security is not the sole responsibility of the IT department. It's a shared responsibility across the entire organization. From leadership team to frontline employees, everyone has a role to play in maintaining a secure environment. Cultivating responsibility means fostering a sense of ownership and accountability for security practices. This includes following security protocols, reporting incidents promptly, and participating in security initiatives and training programs. When everyone feels accountable for security, it creates a collective effort to fortify business against potential threats. So, looking at the slide, we want to make sure that employees have understanding and investment and connection with the business security so that they can be proactive. Being proactive allows them to be aware of threats, risks, but also the processes the business has in place when a risk or threat occurs. All of that needs to be done from a top-down level, at a leadership level, where the organization entirely takes ownership and reports any threats that they come across. So, I would hope we all know about phishing in today's world. However, the obvious phishing emails are very quickly disappearing. The spelling's incorrect or the link looks funny are disappearing. The same spell check and AI tools that we have access to that make things, even like this slide, look great are helping attackers refine their emails to be less obviously fishy. There are 6.4 billion phishing emails sent every day, and 1 in 10 Canadians unknowingly reply to a phishing email. One step further than phishing is impersonation or spear phishing. An attacker will spend a time via multiple methods, oftentimes publicly available methods, getting to know their target, using their research and connections they form to create a very targeted attack, hoping to be more convincing than the blanket, oh, your Netflix account is expiring, or common phishing emails that you're used to seeing. It will likely appear to be someone from a company that you deal with, or someone that you regularly communicate with that you have an inherent trust with. Business email compromise, or BEC, has stolen over 26 billion, that's with a B, dollars worldwide in 2023. This is a subset or usually a result of spear phishing. First, they spoof a sender either by having access to that sender's account or they've had previous access in the past. Then they will reach out to that person's contacts, and usually for monetary gain, these compromised targets the trust relationship that you already have, that their account's unknowingly being compromised, they will then use that to trip you up. These are incredibly hard for us or any filter to catch, as we don't always know what is normal or not normal from a trusted sender. Lastly, we have account takeover. Usually this is a result of one of the first three, whether it was phishing, impersonation, or business email compromise. But this is when they take over your account and actually then start utilizing your account for malicious purposes. Typically, these are easy to stop with business emails, but the biggest danger that we've seen recently is free emails. Think of Gmail, Hotmail, Yahoo, or even internet provided accounts like TELUS or Shaw or Rogers. They're slightly better, but not by much. The reason they're slightly better is if something happens to your account and it is taken over, you can still, in some cases, contact someone to have that account shut down. But with free emails like Gmail or Hotmail or Yahoo, those emails are extremely difficult to shut down. If you lose access for any reason, there is not really a whole lot of recourse to gain action back. If it's paid for and a business level email like Microsoft 365 Business or Google Workspace, these accounts are largely controlled by your IT departments and have multiple levels that allow us to lock out attackers, trace how they got in, or even if users leave the company, redirect emails accordingly. We can enforce things like multi-factor authentication or some other method of security. These have far-ranging impacts that a lot of small businesses don't realize. Not only are your customers affected, but even your suppliers and vendors. Last week, we talked about the example of someone losing access to their free Gmail account that was running their business and the hassle that they had to go through to get customers to stop using it and sending payments like e-transfers to that email. But more critically, they also had a large amount of issues with their suppliers and vendors getting to switch away from that. A lot of suppliers and vendors send a verification email to the old email to switch the email, which obviously causes an issue. If you're a not-for-profit, understanding funding scams and donations are prevalent. If you are in a shipping department of a company, understanding the urgent shipping emails coming from outside of your company might be a red flag. And if you're in a production team, even unexpected pop-ups on a computer may be an issue. So don't just close it and click away. Read it and proceed carefully. These are all threats that we have to be aware of that may be specific to your industry. So how do we start when trying to create a cybersecurity culture? Well, like I said before, it all starts at the top. If you as a business owner or management don't take cybersecurity seriously, neither will your employees. As business leaders and managers, we need to follow the same rules and procedures as our employees. We can't have special rules for ourselves. Prioritizing security in your decision making is a critical but difficult exercise. I've had to learn the hard way. I've made some mistakes by having a different set of rules than everyone else that could have been really disastrous. Some of my airbags or guardrails, like we were talking about last week, saved me, but it was a very close call. In an effort to help a customer, I downloaded an email and I accidentally landed up clicking on a link inside of the email. And this led to the email detonating on my work computer and attempting to download a malicious tool. Our software was quick enough to prevent this from happening. And in the name of security, I went scorched earth and completely wiped my computer and started from scratch. But it was enough for me to learn my lesson and remove a lot of the administrative access that I had previously held on to. I don't need it every minute of every day. So rather, we've implemented a two-tier system where I do have that access when I need it. But if I was to accidentally click on that same link today, it wouldn't have the permissions to run. Making sure that you have regular, open, public training to all of your employees all of the time with follow-up is going to be critical. And then you as a leader participating is also equally or even more critical. Creating a framework of policies and procedures for our employees to follow will also become the next thing. Making sure they're clear, concise, and easily found so that people know how and where to follow them will make it easier for all of our employees to adhere and keep our business safe. We also need to be open to feedback. If we don't accept employee feedback about how a policy is impacting our business or our security, employees won't feel the investment or our care for their input. I found that feedback tends to be the part that lands up tripping up most businesses. Not accepting impact from your employees can be critical to them not buying into your security culture. So today we discussed building a security culture, why we do it, how we start. No security tool that we offer is going to get through to your employees like you as the business owners and stakeholders can. While we can assist with products like email filtering or even training programs, login monitoring and multi-factor authentication, these only go so far. In our next episode, we're going to dive into policies and procedures on how you can set those up to help your employees and your business. Together, let's empower our teams to be the strongest line of defense rather than the last line of defense. And that's all I have for today. Is there any questions or concerns? All right, so today we're talking about the strategic approach. Again, going back to the car analogy, we are talking about getting the knowledge into the people who are driving the car's heads. We don't put anybody on the road without some form of training or some kind of handbook guidance. Even when they're on the road, we make sure there's warning signs, speed limits, and that kind of thing to try and make sure that driving is good for everybody on the road. So we're going to jump into policies and procedures today, starting first of all with policies. What are they? So policies are explaining the why of why we're doing something. They're trying to convey our intentions. We're not trying to define how we're doing something. So it tends to be more general. So while we're trying not to be specific, we do still have to outline expectations. A policy should not force or limit to a specific piece of technology. That's what a process is for. What we're trying to do is guide behavior and not provide a step-by-step checklist of how to do something. You may outline some supporting procedures that do define how, but the policy is not the how. So oftentimes when you have a policy, you'll have supporting procedures. Your policies will need to be reviewed at least annually or every 2 years, but should not need to be updated every other day. If you have to update them frequently, you may need to break out that section that you're updating into a procedure. You don't eat an elephant all at once, but rather in bite-sized pieces. Procedures. So our procedures do get to be a bit more specific to methods and how we're going to accomplish the why and the intentions of our policy. I want to try and remember the why, and I find it helpful to always read the policy before I write my procedure, especially when I'm writing them apart. Sometimes I'll write a policy and a few days later go back and write the procedures. So if I'm going to do that before I start writing my procedure, I always review my policy to remember the why of why I'm writing this procedure. If you're deviating from that why, something's gone wrong. So try to make your steps as high level and straightforward. If your procedure is granular, there might be small changes in the way something looks or the way something is positioned, which could throw the whole thing off. For example, if you're writing a procedure, you would do a more general write an email rather than click on the mailbox icon in the bottom left-hand corner. If your email program changes or that icon isn't in the bottom left-hand corner, now you've kind of caused a little bit of an issue. So having kind of more general write an email rather than being super specific can help our employees succeed when following procedures. However, your outcomes of what you would like accomplished and the specific uh, goal needs to be clearly defined. And that's super critical to know when what you determine as success. Um, Send an email and follow up until you've received a yes or no is better than write an email. It's easy to just write an email and forget about it and move it on, but having that last little detail of including a follow-up is critical to making sure that we know that there's some form of success. We try to employ smart people, but invariably there will be someone who reads it as write an email and go ahead, rather as it's a heads up asking permission. So trying to be intentional with our wording when we're doing procedures is also pretty critical. Going back to thinking of cybersecurity, here are some examples of what a policy would look like and a procedure. So for example, we have invoice payment policy. So this policy might outline things like if we receive an email or what the business's invoices would look like and how we acceptably receive them. So if we receive it via a email or via phone or whatever, including some kind of policy of verifying those invoices before we just go ahead and pay them. Then the procedures are, okay, we're going to dive into those specific things. So the email, if we receive an email invoice, do these steps 1, 2, 3, 4 to verify that before processing payment. If we receive an invoice in the mail, especially one that's unexpected, via some kind of letter, then these are steps 1, 2, 3, 4. If we have a payment portal, these are the steps to pay an invoice. Or if we receive a phone call requiring payment, these are steps before the payment is processed. So your procedures are all of your steps, and your policy is more of your why and what we're trying to achieve. So we're trying to make sure that money doesn't escape the company without being verified, that the destination is correct, and defining those kinds of things, possibly even using an example of when something went wrong, whether that's one from someone else you know or one within your own company, can help impart the why to an employee. Vendor policy approval. This is one that I think a lot of people don't realize the dangers of. It's very easy in today's world for any of our employees to sign up for some online service to help them in their job or help the entire business in everybody's job to achieve something. But if that vendor hasn't gone through specific vetting requirements, there could be very big security holes that we might run into. So having an approval policy of some minimum requirements, some recommendations, some things that as a business we consider before approving a vendor is pretty critical. Then some procedures underneath that would be like a checklist of items or minimum things that your business requires before onboarding with that vendor, possibly software that it has to integrate and work with, security requirements in our business of multi-factor authentication and being compliant with certain kind of cybersecurity standards because of the amount of client data that we're processing. Those might be things that may be relevant or not relevant to your business. Always, if you want, bring us in on those conversations to help with that. There might be things that you aren't considering that from a cybersecurity perspective that we might be able to provide insights on. Having a bring your own device policy is the next biggest one that we usually see across our customers. With work from home and lots of personal devices being in the workplace, having a BYOD policy, regardless of whether the users are using that device for business use or not, is pretty critical. Again, thinking high level, we're trying to explain the why and the how rather than the individual steps. So when we're just finding a bring your own device policy, each business is going to be different of what is allowed in the workplace and what isn't. With multi-factor authentication and the rise of identity management, using personal devices is oftentimes the easiest, simplest, and quickest way, as well as sometimes the cheapest way to make sure that identities are protected, and the user is always going to have that device. There sometimes is a little bit of pushback from the end users about putting work stuff on their personal devices, and this is where you can kind of address some of those, of some kind of compensation that your company might offer, or alternatives of purchasing a device, whether that cost is on the business or on the end user. And then going into some of the actual procedures underneath that would be specifying how devices get signed up to the company, whether they have to go through some kind of approval process, if there's any kind of remote wiping or encryption that needs to be deployed to those devices, how that gets done, whether that involves somebody outside of the company like ourselves, or somebody inside the company. Largely, these policies need to be written in conjunction with whoever your IT provider or your IT team themselves. Basically, these are not static documents that never change. These do end up being live documents, which leads us into a very critical part about success or failure. Listen, learn, update. If we don't listen, and encourage feedback from our employees, stakeholders, and partners, we won't learn things that aren't working or about issues that we maybe aren't covering. And then learn from those by understanding the challenges that some of our employees might be facing or experiences that people are having, whether those are negative or positive, could enhance the ability to us to update those policies and procedures. And then, of course, the most critical part, then taking what we've listened to, what we've learned, and then applying that and updating those documents to fortify our defenses and promote a culture of continuous improvement. When it comes to updating, this is usually where things break down. Or the other place that we've seen it is we hear a whole bunch of negative feedback and scrap the whole policy together. Sometimes listening to what the specific complaints are can be helpful in picking out specific things that we need to change in a policy rather than scrapping the whole thing. So today we have looked at using strategy of putting road signs in place, policies, procedures, things to help guide our employees while they're on the road of this busy world that we live in. We don't know your business as well as you do. The examples we provided might help get you on your way with some of those policies and procedures that you might need, but they are by no means anything comprehensive. Next week, we're going to talk about some of the tools that we can put into the car that kind of act as airbags or guardrails. The last line of defense, we're talking about specific products. that you can use to protect your business. So I look forward to talking with you guys next week. And now there's time for some Q&A if anybody has any questions. All right, I think everyone is here, so we'll get going. Today we are finishing our journey. So going back to our car analogy, we talked about people in the car, the importance of training those people and creating an environment where they feel supported and know how to operate the car. Today we're going to explore putting some guardrails and adding the airbags in the event that our previous efforts fail. So the first guardrail or airbag that I like to always talk about is insurance. So in typical day-to-day, we don't drive without insurance. I wouldn't recommend you do business without cyber liability insurance. As we discussed earlier, 60% of business costs in a cyber event are not actually from the cyber event. Insurance with the right policy can help convert some of these costs and cover them. These are things that tools and IT companies cannot cover for. For example, legal consultation or media and client communications or forensics that are required by the RCMP or government. Insurance will cover these if you answer their questions in great detail and truthfully, and then finally choose the right policy. In the last year, we've consulted on a lot of cyber insurance policies, and we've found huge differences and flaws in the base coverage policies that a lot of companies were given, versus a few $100s more to get a better policy that covers a whole lot more of your possible perils. For example, we have a business that we're doing work with that was given a base cyber insurance policy, and for literally $240 more per year than what they were paying, they got almost entire coverage of up to $2 million worth of events, whereas their base only gave them, I think it was like $500. It was something ridiculous. So making sure that you have a cyber liability insurance policy and you have reviewed that with whoever your trusted IT advisor is, that is pretty critical. The next thing that we talk about is dark web scanning and employee training and testing. Knowledge is power. Knowing when your credentials or information has been exposed is important. We can then use that information to better protect ourselves and our employees. We can take action to stop using certain password combinations and be more wary if we receive an email with recently exposed information in it. Training builds on this. Strong passwords, what phishing emails are like, data security, and of course, and courses we should regularly take and remember. Publicly reporting on who has or who has not completed the training with bonuses or prizes for those who are most helpful, who attend the most, are helpful in motivating our employees. Following that training with safe testing that is reportable and really helpful to know who is paying attention and who is not. So we have a piece of software that we put in place that will monitor the dark web for credentials. Then we follow that up with regular training of what a phishing email looks like, how to make secure password, what is multi-factor authentication, and then finally, in the last half of the month, we usually follow up with a safe phishing email that if you click on or put your password and username into, we then get a report on that. So we know who's needing a little bit more support. A password solution. This is something that not a lot of businesses use, or if they do, each employee is running their own one or a free one baked into the web browser. While these are better than just trying to remember every password or using the same password across all of your accounts, using a centrally managed one that is business managed comes with a lot of different perks. Password keeping solution will allow you to make and keep stronger passwords that are unique to each website. If one website is compromised, the rest of your accounts aren't. In a secure and convenient location, that means that you can access them anywhere, anytime. We've got mobile apps, plugins for web browsers, those kinds of things that allow the convenience factor to make it easier for your employees to adopt. This will even allow you to keep some shared accounts that require multi-factor authentication in a shared space. So in the case, if you have a web account that multiple people need to access and the company is now enforcing multi-factor authentication, that can cause some issues. Whereas if you're using a password solution, you can share those multi-factor keys with multiple people in the company, allowing you to keep one account that is still secured by multi-factor authentication rather than just turning it off. Exfiltration and phishing protection are often built into most solutions, meaning that your employee can't leave with a copy of your passwords, and only verified websites will accept your password input. So by default, if you land up at hpscam.com, your password keeper is not going to fill that password in for you. But if you go to hp.com, it will. So there's simple things like that having a password solution that keeps all of your passwords for you can be very helpful in. Cloud filtering is ever increasingly required. Furthermore, AI or machine learning are needed to combat the sophistication of attacks. For example, the filter we use looks at over 17 different factors, including the urgency and tone of the email, frequency of contact either to or from the sender, links and attachments, the servers that are involved along the way, as well as any of the original email filtering techniques. As we move to more and more cloud-based file solutions like OneDrive, iCloud, Google Drive, and Dropbox, files increasingly never touch our computer that traditional antiviruses can scan. Having a native scanner that is cloud-based that allows it to scan cloud-only files becomes a critical part to business protection. Lastly, a protection that will monitor for abnormal login events, such as a login from Calgary at 8 a.m. and a login from Venezuela at 8:05, becomes ever increasingly important. So the solution that we use can help in all of these situations and even remediate. We had a client the other day that had a login unexpectedly from the UK. The account was immediately blocked and the password changed, revoking whoever had attempted to log in across the ocean from ever getting into the account. Backup, backup, backup. I like to say backups are only slightly less important than oxygen. Something will happen. We don't know when, but only having one copy of information is going to be a problem. Whether it's fire, flood, theft, accidental deletion, that is critical. What people don't realize is most cloud providers may offer versioning, but not a true backup. For example, a client of ours lost a year's worth of email. Not this year or last year, but a 12-month period, 5.5 years ago, from October to October, went missing. When we contacted Microsoft about this, it's on a cloud service. People think that Microsoft would have this. They asked us, was it deleted in the last 30 days? And we said no. They asked if it was in the recycle bin. We said no. And they said, sorry, refer to whatever section it is in their terms of services that we agreed to that says that they only take care of things for 30 days. So having a third-party backup outside of wherever your cloud environment is hosted becomes critical. Lastly, mistakes do happen. We're all human, and so not all of the methods built in are 100% guaranteed. So we do like to have this. We offer one that is third party. It's based in Canadian data centers, keeps your data for 7 years. So whether it's an email, whether it's a chat, whether it's a file that's cloud-based, we have a third-party copy and backup of that. Quick recap, over the last 4 sessions, we've gone on the journey. The picture that we wanted to paint was business driving a car driving along the road with your employees inside and all the security features that we need to try and help our employees stay on the road. A lot of it lands up being outside of the scope of our reach as an IT department. I'll leave you here hopefully with better understanding of security of your business beyond cybersecurity tools and aspects that we provide. We're open to consultations and conversations at any time. So we'd like to open it up for any questions or concerns. This is the last one of the series.